Hey, it's Brian Bennett, founder of Strategy for Churches. In this video, I want to walk you through some of the key terminology that we use with churches in the strategic process that we've created. And this will either help you adopt our language to give you a shared and common language with your team, or it'll help you get clear about the language you do want to use. And so just walking through these terms will be beneficial either way. And so we're going to walk through a couple of the key phrases and terminology that we use in the strategic process. And the first one is the church profile. And a church profile is really an at a glance look at a church. It's an at a glance look at the inside or the inner heartbeat and life and backbone of a church. And so with the profile, we're looking at the biblical anchors that a church believes are God's given blueprint to the church for his purpose and meaning and what a church is and what a church is called to do. So biblical anchors are kind of the foundation point we start with, because in the strategic process, the biblical anchors should inform, give guidance, to act as guardrails, and give creative power to the mission and purpose of a church. So we want to begin there. Second aspect of a church's profile is the demographics. So we look at your church and looking at the demographics within your church, not just of ethnicities, but of age and ranges of participants of the body of members within your church, or participants depending on your church structure within your church. Third aspect of a church profile is the strengths and weaknesses of a church. And so this could be financial, this could be logistical, this could be ministry oriented. But we're going to look at the strengths and weaknesses. What are your core capacities that you have, that are God has given you, you've cultivated over time? What are the unique passions? We'll talk about that in just a moment, and some of those aspects. So we're going to look at the strengths and weaknesses and how these combine together with some of the passions and callings of your church, and assess those. Another aspect is the distinctive DNA, and that is really, if we could get under the surface and kind of look at the under the water of your church, what are the values that are shared and held within your body? There's the ideal values that we are looking for and reaching towards, and then there's kind of the values today on the ground, and sometimes those match up a lot, and other times there's a gap between our ideal and our reality today. And so with the distinctive DNA, we're looking at what is your distinct culture within your church. And that last piece I referenced just a minute ago is the passions, the callings, and these play into the strengths and weaknesses, but they also stand alone. And those core competencies that your church has. So some churches put a lot of emphasis and focus on their worship, and they're very gifted and strengthened in their worship. They're very strong there. Other churches in their communication and their preaching and their children's or student ministry aspects, or missions, or community ministry, small groups. There's lots of ways that your church, with men's or women's ministries, depending on your strategy, there's a lot of ways that your church can have a distinctive profile. And every church has biblical anchors, and every church has a distinctive profile or personality, and strengths and weaknesses, and those things that we've talked about here. So first word is a church profile, and with that, we're talking about all of these elements, which is really your church in a very quick snapshot. Second key term is church ministry portfolio. So especially in the strategic planning process, we start off with your church, and then we move to the environment. And the portfolio today may be right on, or it may be off target, but for our purposes here, the church portfolio is simply the various internal and external ministry a church discerns to engage in to fulfill its mission. So this is simply the breadth and the various ministries, with internal to your church or external, that you choose to engage in order to fulfill your mission, your understanding of what God has called you to do, and the choices you make, because we can't do every ministry. So we make the choices about the current ministries that we have, whether to continue them, to start something, to stop something, to fix something that's broken or isn't no longer quite on point. And that's what our church ministry profile is, or portfolio, I'm sorry, is the various ministries, internal and external, that we engage in. The third term for today is a church's posture. And this is really important. A church's posture is the beliefs, values, and attitudes. Beliefs, values, and attitudes a church has towards its local community who are not disciples of Jesus. So in other words, how do you view outsiders outside of the walls of your church? How do you view those who show up and maybe into a small group setting, or you encounter in a coffee shop, or they show up on a Sunday morning, who do not hold the same values as you do, who are not disciples of Jesus? How will you treat them? How will you view them? What words will you say or not say to them? All of those things is a church's posture. And there, Andy Crouch and others have done a lot of work here in terms of our posture towards culture, our understanding of culture. And that really is what we're getting after here, is what's our posture towards the culture, external culture of our church and towards the people in our community. And there's the posture that we think we have, and then there's the posture that we really have, the experience of those, the things that we say, and the experience of those who are not followers of Jesus, who experience our church. Once again, sometimes those are very much aligned. Other times there's a gap. We think it's really critical, especially where in today's world, that we reflect on our posture and seek to align it with what we believe are the biblical anchors and God's heart and posture towards the community around us. So that's what we're talking about there with church posture, is our heartbeat, our vision, our beliefs, our values, our attitude towards those who are not followers of Jesus in our community. And so important for us to think about and reflect on. Another aspect is the strategic position. I can actually skip the slide. The partnerships, strategic partnerships are the local and the global partnerships. So we tend to think probably more about the global partnerships, but just as important to a church in order to fulfill its mission are its local partnerships, and believing that we are entering a new day where there's going to be far more partnerships between churches and far more partnerships between churches and nonprofit ministries and Christian and non-Christian organizations in their community. So a strategic partnership might be a partnership with a local school. It might be a partnership with a local homeless shelter or a food bank. It could also be a partnership with the local mayor or the government, or a business, or a businessman or woman, an individual who maybe is wealthy or has a heartbeat to get after something in the community, an issue that we also have the heartbeat for. And it could also be a partnership with another church to maybe they have a counseling center, and so we're going to refer our people to that counseling center. And maybe we have a recovery ministry, so they're going to refer their people to this recovery ministry. So we're going to work in partnership together in order to better fulfill God's mission and vision for our church. And so these are local partnership, and then the global partnership that we have with whether it's missions organizations or missionaries, or once again businesses or NGOs or government organization. That's what strategic partnerships is all about. And there's a lot of room here for us to think about when we're forming our strategy. Once we get clear about our strengths and weaknesses and capacities and profile, once we get clear about the needs in our community and the opportunities there, and also in our global context, when we start making some trade-off decisions about what we're going to do, what we believe God's calling us to do and not calling us to do, that key part of that is then looking at what are the strategic partnerships that we need to keep, start, or grow in order to fulfill that mission. The last piece is the strategic position. And the strategic position is really a combination of everything we've talked about so far. So as I think about a strategic position, I'm thinking about everything internal to the church. And so it's a combination of a church's profile and portfolio. Now, the portfolio might include some ministries outside of the church, hopefully some ministries that are engaging and reaching and blessing the community. So it's the combination of a church's profile, portfolio, and posture, along with the partnerships we just talked about. And here's the key piece: aligned, coherent, working together in synergy to serve, reach, and bless its local and global context. The strategic position of a church is the combination of a church's profile, portfolio, posture, and partnerships aligned to serve, reach, and bless its local and global context. In other words, to live on mission with the needs, the opportunities, the values in our local community, and then the global realities that we choose to engage in as part of God's bigger mission. So that's really the combination, the coherence, the alignedness. The more aligned, the better we are with our church, from the posture to the ministry portfolio, with the external needs and opportunities in our local and global context. That's our strategic position, and that relates very deeply to a church's strategy. A church's strategy it builds off of the strategic position, which is really how we are going to seek to particularly and distinctly live on mission in our locally. We're going to deploy our resources and our people in our local context and the global context to accomplish God's mission. That's what strategy is. How are we going to strategically steward and deploy the resources and then the people of our body in our local and global context in order to fulfill God's mission? That's what we mean by church strategy. Thanks for joining us. It's our heartbeat to serve churches. And so if we can serve you, we can come alongside you, we can provide the process, we can come alongside and we can help train your facilitator of your process. If you don't have an outside facilitator, even though we highly recommend that, grab a buddy and from another church, we'll train them, who's already got some basic skill level, and we'll train them further in the strategic process, the strategy for churches strategic process, so they can serve you. We also provide certified strategic facilitators from Strategy for Churches to walk you through our process. We would love to walk beside you, serve you in any way we can. If there's anything we can do to help you better fulfill God's callings and vision that He has laid on your church, we're here for the journey. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for your ministry. Thanks for persevering. And thanks for your heart to join God's mission in seeking to reach, serve, and bless both your local context and your global context for His glory and for the blessing of the nations.